eliminated some of the restrictions in which you can carry a concealed weapon if you're a concealed carry permit holder, as my wife and I are. I finally caught up with her. She went and got her renewal this year when I got my permit, because Mark Hilton, one of our representatives, set up a class where we could actually go after session a couple of nights at the General Assembly, and I finally ran out of excuses for not having time and stayed around and got mine. Now, I'll be honest with you, if it were up to me, there would be no restrictions on places where you can carry concealed. I would feel I feel safe right now because I see some very important people back in the back there, and they make me feel safe. And I think that fellow probably has a firearm. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. I would feel even safer if I knew 100 of you folks in here were packed. I really would. It's not the law-abiding citizens who have to go through what you have to go through to get a concealed carry permit that are a problem out here. The law enforcement people know that. They know that. They tell me that all the time. You know, despite all these great things we were able to do, we had an obstructionist in Raleigh. I don't know if you heard about that or not, but we had one dear woman who tried her best to undo what you did in 2010. I don't think I need to give you her name. We had a record number of vetoes in 2011 and 2012. But you know what? We also had a record number of veto overrides in 2011 and 2012. That brings me to the final point I want to make. This election coming up is very important. You know it, everybody said it. It's important for a number of reasons. Number one, we must keep or grow our majorities in both houses of the legislature. That's vital. We lose the majority, they can undo everything we did in the last 2 years. It's like that. Second thing is, we've got to elect Pat McCrory because we've got to have somebody who won't try to obstruct what we're doing in the General Assembly. And he's the guy that won't. So probably the most important election, however, in North Carolina is one you may not have thought about unless you go to a lot of meetings like this. We must re-elect Judge Paul Newby to the North Carolina Supreme Court. I'll tell you why. Because even if we have both houses, even if we have a supermajority in both houses, even if we have the governor who's never going to veto anything significant we do, you know what will happen? Right now, we've got a 4-3 conservative to liberal split in the Supreme Court. So I'm not worried about them declaring anything we do to try to make some legitimate change in Raleigh and try to drive the corruption out of there. I'm not concerned about that being declared unconstitutional. But if we lose one seat, you know how liberals judge. They rewrite the law as they go, and they feel like it's their duty. And no matter whether we're passing good laws, the governor's agreeing with them or not, the Supreme Court can strike that stuff down if they decide to go that route. So we've got to get Judge Newby reelected. That's one of those statewide elections. And that's why we've got to get as many Republicans out in every district, even if they're strong Republican districts that are likely to re-elect me or Buck or anybody else. We've got to win by huge majorities so that Justice Newby will carry ours large enough to overcome some other districts that he won't carry. Now, we did a lot of things in 2000 and 2012. We've got a lot to do. I won't bore you with those things. Our leadership of both houses has said the two biggies are educational reform and tax reform. Also, there's some things left for us to do individually. One is to give the DOT an alternative to to totaling I-95. And there's some other things as well. This is the most important election we've had in a long time. And you know what? I had to decide 2 years ago what it was worth to me. I felt like 2010 was an important election. And I had to decide what it was worth to me. My wife and I were having a conversation in our living room one night. And if you've heard this story, forgive me for boring you, but I'll make it brief. We were talking about where we might want to live in retirement. We got a daughter that lives in Huntsville, Alabama. Beautiful area, great demographics, nice places to eat if we like to go. But you know what? We've lived in North Carolina all our lives. She's from Onslow County. I'm from Nash County originally. We have no desire to live outside North Carolina, but we know that when we retire, our money will go further in any other state in the southeast, the part of the country we love, than it will in North Carolina. I have financial clients that flee to Tennessee and Wyoming and all kinds of other places where the tax burden is not as bad as it is here. And that's the reason. As we were talking about that, as can happen, and my wife can tell you, I kind of started to get red from the neck up, and it just bugs seen that happen before. The guys that see me on the house floor have seen it happen at least 2 or 3 times. But I just got really, really angry. And I said, you know what? This was after the fellow who's now the House Majority Leader, Skip Stanley, and the fellow who's now the Speaker of the House, Tom Tillis, had come to recruit me to run and talk to me about it. And I said, yeah, maybe I'll at least think about it. I'll pray about it. I'll let you know later. That night was the night the decision was made. I said, you know, I can do one of two things. I can cut and run, and I'm not knocking anybody who's done this because it's the logical thing to do. I can cut and run, and like other taxpayers, just say when the last taxpayer leaves North Carolina, please flip off the lights because there won't be anybody to pay the bill. Or I can fight and say I'm not going to let the fiscally insane who've been running the state for the last 30 years continue to destroy the state I love. If my children and grandchildren... I want to think about me, because, you know, I've had my time pretty much. I mean, they can only hurt me just so much. But, you know, I think about the economic opportunities I had, the opportunities for advancement I had from the time I was a child to where I am now. And if my children, and especially my grandchildren, decide they want to stay in North Carolina, I'd like for them to have similar opportunities to what I had. And frankly, right now they don't. And they won't, unless we continue to turn the state around. So I didn't run for me. You know, I mean, sure, I'm upset about what I have to do and some of the tax I have to pay. But I ran with my grandchildren. That's who I think about when I walk neighborhoods. That's who I think about when I go to meetings and stand up and talk like this. I can see their faces. Because they're the ones I'm fighting for. We've got to get past this, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I'd like to think that people in this room are bigger and better than that. And are thinking about the generations of people that we have strapped $111,000 debt per taxpayer on. That's the ones I'm worried about. That's the ones I'm thinking about. That's why Barack Obama cannot be reelected. That's why we cannot give the state back to the Democrats. And that's why I'm willing to give up tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of my time and days away from my wife and family whom I love in order to make that happen. I've told you why I ran in 2010, and I've told you how important that election and this one we've got going now are to me. Now, I got a question for you. How important is this election to you? How important is the future of your children, your grandchildren, and other people their age to you? I know it's worth at least $25 because that's what you pay to get in here. But I ask you something. Is it worth $50? Is it worth $100? Is it worth $500? Is it worth $1,000? People can give it all different levels. $125 is a stretch for some of you here. Some of you know, an expensive lunch maybe or breakfast if we really splurge. How much is it worth? Worth a lot to me. Being out of my office more than half of every week for about 6 months next year is not going to be fun, but it's worth it. Now, I don't ask you to have the level of commitment I have, but I just ask you, how much is it worth it to you? How much is it worth walking 20 hours over these next 6 weeks through neighborhoods? Is it worth 10? Is it worth 30? What's it worth? How much your time is it worth? Is it worth spending 5 hours at the Victory Center making phone calls? Is it worth 2? Is it worth 10? Is it worth 20? What's it worth? See, I can't answer that question for you. I can answer what it's worth to me. I can't answer what it's worth to you. But you know what? You can start to answer that question tonight. We purposely put one of those envelopes at every, I said, I don't care what else is brought tonight, I want one of those envelopes at every place that's set for dinner tonight. Because I'm going to challenge you. I want you to put your full contact information on there, and I want you to tell these two nice ladies in the back who wore out probably several pairs of shoes, as well as my wife and I, last time walking through neighborhoods, and I want you to tell them exactly what you're willing to do. For my campaign and for the overall campaign of the Victory Center. Because if you go in as one of my volunteers, you'll be helping everybody. You'll be helping me, you'll be helping Buck, you'll be helping the state and national people. Because what they'll do is they'll have you call or walk in my area. And we'll be added to the questions about McCrory and Romney and the rest of them. So you'll be helping the whole people. But I want you to put on there what you're willing to do. If you want to be more specific than what's on there and say, I'm willing to walk in my neighborhood and my neighborhood is something, 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 put it down there. If we don't have what you're willing to do on there, put it down there. Hand it to those two ladies, and we need to know that. We've got to get busy. In folks in Nash County is going to have to be done by the likes of those ladies sitting back there at the back table leading the charge. Because Minnie and I are spending all our spare time in Franklin County. You know, the redistricting committee did me a favor and not so much favor last time. They made my district more conservative, put half my voters out where they were voting. We spent, let's see, we went to 3 festivals in Franklin County last Saturday. We spent all Labor Day in Franklin County, from meeting people from Lake Royale all the way to Youngsville. And I'm going to at least 2 things. Maybe you probably don't know all this yet, but I'm going to at least, I think, 3 things tomorrow in Franklin County. We're having around the charity golf tournament that I'm playing here in the afternoon. So, and I went to Lewisburg to the Franklin County Executive Committee. That's Mark's group except it's his counterpart in Franklin County, drafting volunteers, because I've got to spend the next few weeks walking neighborhoods in Youngsville and Pilot and Sunville and Bud, Fun Lake, whatever else we can find there with the population center. So I need to help in Nash County. You know, I need to help, because you folks know who I am. Those folks in Franklin County don't know me from Adam's house cat. They don't know that I'll stand up for them. They don't know. So they've got to find out. Anyway, I guess I appreciate you long enough. Let me thank you once again, every one of you that I thank you, little folks. I thank all of you who are here. I've had a wonderful bunch of support.